I destroyed my entitled sister's wedding, and I'd do it again. She was always the favorite. From the moment she was born, with those wide, vacant eyes and that scream that pulled everyone into orbit, she took. She took and never gave. The kind of girl who knew how to cry at just the right volume, who learned early that a well-timed tear would earn her candy, comfort, and clemency. I was 2 years older, but I was never ahead. When I brought home a B+, it was, "You can do better." When she spelled her name right in crayon, it was applause and ice cream. They'd place her drawings on the fridge, even if it was just a scribble. Mine stayed in the folder, neat and forgotten. It didn't stop with our parents. She took my clothes without asking. My journals read aloud for her friends to laugh at. My makeup ruined and returned without so much as a shrug. When I fell in love, real, deep, almost pathetic love, with Mark, she flirted with him the night I introduced them. I saw it, the way her hand lingered on his arm, how she threw her head back laughing at his dumbest jokes. I warned him. He smiled like I was being silly. He stopped being mine 3 weeks later. And even after that betrayal, I kept my mouth shut. I stayed civil. My parents said it was grown up to move on. But it wasn't moving on. It was burying the knife she'd planted between my ribs deeper, out of sight. The final blow? When our grandmother passed, she left the house and the investment account to me. It was in her will, written in her own careful script. She'd always known what my sister was. She used to call her a snake with a pretty skin. But somehow, mysteriously, the will was contested. A newer version appeared, handwritten, without witnesses, and riddled with just enough fake sentimentality that no one questioned it but me. Suddenly, everything was hers. My grandmother's antique rings, her property, even the boxes of old letters and pictures I thought I'd get to keep, gone, erased. Absorbed into the world of, my sister deserves it more. My parents didn't even flinch. So when her wedding invitations were mailed and my name was nowhere on them, not even a courtesy envelope, I didn't cry. I didn't call. I didn't ask why. I simply smiled and opened the folder I'd been quietly filling for years. The affair with Mark wasn't her first. It wouldn't be her last. She moved through men like stepping stones, always eyeing the next one before she let go of the last. The groom, Andrew, was older, successful. The kind of man who mistook a cruel tongue for confidence. He thought he'd found a sharp, elegant woman who knew what she wanted. What he didn't realize was that she only ever wanted what wasn't hers, until it was. Then she'd want more. I met Andrew once, briefly at a family function. He was stiff, cordial, but uncomfortable. His eyes followed my sister everywhere she went, and not with love, with wariness, like he knew she'd explode if he turned the wrong way. He didn't know the half of it. The wedding was to be held at this ridiculously overpriced vineyard. Vines twisted around hand-carved archways, and there were strings of crystal lights sagging between old oaks. Her dress was custom, imported silk, hand-stitched with pearls. She'd posted sneak peeks online, each one carefully filtered and captioned like it was Vogue's next cover. Her followers lapped it up, of course. But I watched with the quiet glee of someone who knew the tower was built on sand, because I had the proof. It started with an old phone I'd found in a drawer. Her backup device. She'd forgotten to wipe it. I don't think she ever expected I'd go through it. Maybe she thought I wouldn't dare. Inside were years of messages, conversations with exes that overlapped with new boyfriends, deleted bank statements, passwords scrawled into notes, photos taken in hotels that weren't the ones she told people she'd been visiting, and most damning of all, her voice, rambling, confident, intoxicated by her own cleverness. One voicemail, left for a friend, was her gloating about how easy it had been to manipulate Grandma into changing the will, how she'd practiced her fake crying beforehand, how she'd flushed the real copy down the toilet. I backed up everything, documents, recordings, screenshots. I printed them, stored them in a sleek black folder labeled simply, Truth. The day of the wedding, I wore navy blue, sharp shoulders, no jewelry, hair pulled back clean and tight. I looked like a lawyer walking into court, not a guest walking into an overpriced fantasy. No one stopped me at the entrance. No one even looked twice. The staff didn't know I was the estranged sister. They were busy guiding guests to white chairs under white canopies. Everything was white, like they were trying to bleach the dirt away. She hadn't seen me yet. I took a seat near the back where no one would bother me and waited. My parents were in the front row, smiling like mannequins. My father looked thinner than I remembered. My mother had overdone her makeup. Neither had spoken to me in 6 months, and neither looked back now. The ceremony began right on time. Classical music swelled. The bridesmaids floated down the aisle like overpriced swans. And then she appeared, my sister, bathed in artificial light and smug satisfaction. Her dress glittered. Her lips were curled into that sharp smile she'd perfected since we were children. Andrew looked stunned, nervous but dazzled. They made it through the vows. The crowd sighed in unison. The officiant smiled and asked the question we all knew was coming. If anyone here objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. I stood. The silence was instant, heavy. You could hear the wind trip over itself. All heads turned. Some gasped, others frowned. My sister's face went blank, then pale. Her fingers tightened around Andrew's hand. He looked from her to me, and I saw the question forming in his throat. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked forward slowly, calmly, and handed the folder to Andrew. "These are for you," I said, meeting his eyes. "You deserve to know who you're marrying." He hesitated, but took them. My sister called my name, voice sharp, desperate, slicing through the air. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Andrew flipped the folder open, right there at the altar. First came the bank records. Then the texts, the pictures, the voicemail. The guests began to murmur. The officiant took a step back. One of the bridesmaids, her friend from college, was already pulling out her phone. The air turned electric. My sister tried to grab the folder, but Andrew moved away from her like she'd caught fire. He looked at her, really looked at her, and then, in front of everyone, he said 3 words. "This is real?" Her mouth opened and closed, fish-like. "It's fake, it's all fake. She's lying, she's obsessed." I didn't need to stay after that. I turned and walked back down the aisle while her voice rose behind me, shrill and unraveling. Flowers tipped over. Someone gasped again. I didn't look back. The sound of her perfect day imploding was sweeter than any wedding march. Let her explain to her guests why the groom left mid-vow. Let her tell our parents how she lost everything they helped her steal. Let her followers ask questions she couldn't answer. She wanted my silence. Instead, I gave her a mirror, and now she can choke on the reflection. I didn't go home that night. I didn't want the silence of my apartment. I knew if I sat alone with the echo of her voice cracking into panic, if I let the aftershocks catch up to me, I might start to feel something other than satisfaction. And that wasn't the plan. The plan was never to feel sorry. It was to make sure she couldn't lie her way through another performance without consequences. She'd burned bridges for years. This time, I made sure the fire was under her feet, not behind her. Instead, I drove to a hotel across town. Nothing fancy, just clean sheets and walls too thick for regret to slip through. I left my phone off. Not silent. Off. I knew the calls would come. My mother would demand an explanation with the same tone she used when I forgot to say thank you as a child. My father would ask me if this was really necessary. And my sister, of course, would scream first, threaten second, then probably beg third, when she realized Andrew wasn't returning. But I didn't give them the chance. They had over 2 decades to listen. I was done speaking to them. All I had to say had already been said, out loud, in front of everyone they tried so hard to impress. The next morning, I turned my phone on for one reason, to check the fallout. It was worse than even I expected. The wedding hashtag had been hijacked by chaos. Photos of the ceremony frozen in mid-collapse were already circulating. A blurry screenshot of Andrew holding the folder had turned into a meme. One guest had filmed my walk up the aisle and uploaded it with the caption, "The real bride arrives." 500,000 views in under 12 hours. Comments ranged from sympathy to applause to conspiracy theories I couldn't begin to unpack. But the one thing no one was doing? Defending her. Even the die-hard friends she'd curated like accessories had gone silent. The bridesmaids' Instagram accounts were locked. Her college roommate had posted a vague, Some people really show their true colors story with no names, but everyone knew. Everyone always knew. They were just waiting for someone else to say it. Andrew's social media vanished entirely, profiles scrubbed, statuses gone. He'd vanished into the digital void. It was smart. The last thing he needed was more eyes on him while trying to untangle his life from hers. Then came the texts. First from unknown numbers, angry ones, threatening ones, pretending to be hurt on her behalf. I blocked them without replying. Then, later, a single message from a number I recognized but hadn't seen in months. Mark, you didn't have to do it like that. No greeting, no apology, just cowardice condensed into one bitter sentence. I stared at it for a few minutes, then deleted it. He wasn't worth space on my screen, let alone a response. By noon, my sister finally messaged. Not a wall of fury like I expected, just 5 words. I'll hope you're happy now. I didn't answer her either. It wasn't about happiness. It never had been. I wasn't looking for a trophy. I wasn't celebrating the wreckage. I just wanted her to stop walking over people and calling it love. I wanted her to taste what it felt like to be powerless for once. I knew it wouldn't be over. People like her don't crumble and stay down. They rebrand, reinvent, spin a new story. Victimhood fits like a glove when you've been playing puppet master long enough. The only question was how fast she'd move, and how far she'd go to spin the narrative in her favor. I didn't have to wait long. By day 3, she posted a photo. Not of the wedding. Those were gone, scrubbed like they'd never existed. This one was cropped tight, just her face, wrapped in a blanket, hair pulled back like she'd been crying for hours. The caption? Sometimes people you trust hurt you the most. Healing in silence. Silence. My ass. I knew her too well. That post wasn't grief. It was bait. She wanted sympathy. She wanted followers to lean in close and whisper, poor thing. She wanted to flip the script and make it seem like I was jealous. Like I was the bitter sister who never got over being second. But now she didn't control the narrative. Not this time. I logged off and went to my lawyer. Yes, I had a lawyer. No, not because I expected a lawsuit. I knew she wouldn't risk the exposure. But because I wasn't stupid. I had crossed a line. Publicly. With documentation. And even if every word of it was true, I needed to make sure I was covered. Legally. Strategically. And most of all, permanently. My lawyer, Marianne, was brutal and brilliant. She didn't ask why I did it. She asked what I had left, what I still hadn't used. She went through every document, made copies, and created a separate file for anything that could tie into financial misconduct. She told me flatly, if she wants to play games, we'll play chess, not checkers. That's when I learned the wedding wasn't just a personal mess. It was a business disaster. Apparently, my sister had used Andrew's money and his business account to pay for parts of the wedding, including the venue, the catering, and some high-end favors they planned to send to influencers. She'd pitched it to him as a joint marketing opportunity, the kind of spin she was famous for, but she'd also double-dipped, used their joint credit line to pay herself back, faked invoices, and worse, she listed the expenses under client relations in his company's accounting books. Andrew had found out. That's what the silence meant. He wasn't hiding. He was building a case. Marianne told me he'd already contacted his own lawyers, not to sue my sister yet, but to start severing ties, financially, legally, permanently. Apparently, he'd found more than just my folder. Her laptop had been unlocked when he got home. She'd been mid-email writing to another man. The tone wasn't friendly, and suddenly her empire wasn't just cracked, it was bleeding. What followed was quiet, but not calm. She went into hiding. No public events, no posts, except vague, sad updates about healing and learning. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. Anyone who'd seen the wedding crash already knew. I figured she'd wait a few months, let the noise die down, and then pop back up with some new version of herself. Maybe she'd rebrand as a speaker about overcoming betrayal. Maybe she'd write a book. I didn't care. What I didn't expect was the private investigator. He came 2 weeks after the wedding, showed up at my door, suit too clean, smile too polite, said he was working on behalf of a concerned third party looking into inheritance disputes. He wanted to ask about my grandmother's will. I didn't invite him in. I told him plainly that everything had already gone through probate. that the documents had been reviewed, disputed, and, mysteriously, overturned. He nodded, took notes, and left his card. The name wasn't real. I knew a plant when I saw one. It was her. She was digging, trying to find out if I still had the original will. Maybe she thought I'd hidden it, that I was waiting for the right moment to reverse things. But I didn't need to. The truth was enough. Her lies were unraveling, thread by thread. She was just trying to stitch herself a new net before the fall finished. I kept the card, handed it to Marianne the next day. She smiled and said, "She's scared." Good. And that was the thing, she was scared. But not because I humiliated her in front of 100 guests. Not because her followers turned cold. Not even because Andrew was building a case. She was scared because for the first time in her life, someone had taken control of the narrative away from her. She didn't know how to exist without it. But me, I was finally free. Not because I won, not because I exposed her, but because I didn't flinch when she pushed back. I didn't play the quiet good daughter. I didn't stay the polite sister, always swallowing the pain. I spoke up, and for once the world listened. Still, I wasn't naive. She wasn't finished. People like her never retire. They retreat, rearm, and wait. I knew she'd try again, new angle, new prey. Maybe she'd write that memoir, or maybe she'd land on some reality show looking for redemption. She'd say just enough of the truth to make herself sound brave, but not enough to expose how deep the rot really went. And when she did, I'd be ready. Not with more folders or more confrontations, but with calm indifference. Because now she didn't scare me. She couldn't take anything from me that I hadn't already taken back. The week after the investigator showed up, I made the final move. I didn't need revenge anymore. That part had already played out. But what I needed, what I deserved, was closure. Not the kind that came from silence or distance, the kind that ended things with no doors left cracked open. So I did the one thing that was left to do. I filed for an official petition to reopen my grandmother's will. Not because I believed the court would reverse it. By now, most of the assets had been sold, liquefied, or consumed by my sister's insatiable spending. The point wasn't to reclaim the house or the investment account. That ship had already been looted and sunk. What I wanted was a formal record stating the original will was tampered with. That the so-called updated version had no legal merit. I wanted the lie to be named as such. And I had the evidence, handwriting analysis, timeline inconsistencies, even a private statement recorded by my grandmother's longtime nurse, who swore she never saw any new will being signed in those last months. Everything lined up. I submitted it through Marianne, who made sure every detail was airtight. If my sister wanted to fight it, she'd have to do it in public, in front of real judges, under oath. She didn't. Her response came 3 days later through a lawyer she'd hired out of desperation. They didn't deny anything. No rebuttal, no protest. Just a vague agreement to resolve the matter out of court if I dropped all public commentary. It was weak, transparent, a way to avoid headlines. I told Marianne to go ahead and accept, on one condition. I wanted a formal letter of acknowledgement, signed, admitting she fabricated the second will, not for public release, just for my records. I didn't need to expose her again. I needed to close the book knowing I wasn't crazy. It arrived a week later, folded inside a cream envelope with a signature that trembled more than she ever had in person. I read it once, slowly, then stored it in a locked drawer with the other documents. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel angry. What I felt was finished. Meanwhile, Andrew made his move. It took him longer, but he filed a civil suit against her for financial fraud. Claimed damages, filed subpoenas, dragged out the receipts. Apparently, she'd drained more than just their joint savings. She'd rerouted money from his company accounts to pay off private debts and finance her online brand. He had proof. He had timestamps. And most importantly, he had the motivation. She'd embarrassed him on a national stage. He wanted repayment, not revenge. Her accounts were frozen. The settlement demanded was staggering. She couldn't pay. She tried selling her car, her brand partnerships, even the rights to her image for a potential TV deal that never materialized. Nothing stuck. Companies pulled out. Collaborators distanced themselves. The woman who used to boast about being her own empire was now begging for financial mercy behind closed doors. She reached out to me once more, this time through an email. Not dramatic, not manipulative, just cold and transactional. She wanted to know if I'd consider covering her legal fees in exchange for a public apology video that would clear the air for both of us. I didn't respond. There was nothing to clear. She had burned the field, salted the earth, and now expected me to hand her water. I let the silence answer her. Eventually, the lawsuit ended in a default judgment. She didn't have the funds, couldn't maintain her representation, and stopped attending hearings. Andrew won. She owed him more than she'd ever be able to repay. She disappeared after that, shut down her pages, deleted her channels, moved out of the apartment she'd bragged about renting in cash. The last trace I saw of her was a blurry photo in a local forum. Someone said she was working at a boutique in another state, low profile, no press. Just another woman folding overpriced sweaters behind a counter, far from the cameras she used to crave. And I lived, without the weight of her shadow, without the ache of being the overlooked daughter. I stopped waiting for my parents to call. They never did. They'd chosen her over and over again. Let them keep her. I took a new job, smaller firm, more independence. I moved to a place with windows that faced the morning sun. Nothing extravagant, just mine. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. If I could go back, would I stop myself from ruining her wedding? Would I have pulled her aside in private, saved face, kept the drama off the stage? My answer never changes. She chose her path. I only made sure everyone saw where it ended. And if I had to do it all again, I wouldn't hesitate. She stole too much for too long, thinking no one would ever say enough. I did. And that's the end. Not a truce, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just peace. Earned, not given. I don't owe her anything, and she no longer has the power to take.